Hi, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining our LinkedIn Live today. I'm Hayley Burgess, your moderator. I'm really excited about this conversation and grateful to spend time with some of my colleagues who are doing such incredible work across the Inovalon family of products and services. And did you know that over 89% of Americans live within 5 miles of a pharmacy? So, what does that mean? Pharmacists are not only the most accessible healthcare professionals, we're also among the most trusted. And as we close out American Pharmacists Month, we wanted to take a moment to reflect on how pharmacy has evolved, where it stands today, and where technology and innovation are really taking us. And I'm thrilled to be joined by Doctors Christen Roy and Martha Tran. Christen and Martha bring such unique perspectives from patient safety to clinical surveillance to script med specialty medication technologies. And this is going to be such a rich conversation with us today. We're going to talk about how data and innovation and care all intersect to advance the profession of pharmacy. And I'll tag my colleagues to introduce themselves. Christen, will you start us off?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Haley. Yeah, I'm really excited to be here. Happy American Pharmacists Month to everybody out there. So my role here at Inovalon is responsible for translating the ScriptMed system needs of our pharmacy customers into our internal product teams. So basically what that means is the customers tell me what they want the system to do, and then I tell our teams what that is in their language so they can go ahead and build it. And that is extremely rewarding considering that I've been on the other side of that puzzle for a really long time. And that's really what I wanted to do when I started, but I had no idea how to get here from there. But my journey through hospital, retail, and specialty pharmacy has all brought me to where I am today. And all of those experiences help shape a lot of the conversations that I have both with the customers and with our internal partners. So, really excited to have this conversation today.
Thanks, Kristen and
Martha?
Haley. I'm just so happy to be
Yeah.
able to join this discussion today. A little background on myself. I'm a clinical pharmacist by training, started my career in the oncology world. I've always been in the inpatient side, where I had the opportunity to really work at a facility that was pretty advanced technologically, and that really got my interest, kind of learning how technology can really help with safety. As a pharmacist, I've always been really passionate about patient safety. And over the years, I've just become more and more involved with how pharmacists can really leverage that technology for improving patient care and patient safety.
Terrific. What a great professional journey you both have had. And the pharmacist role has really transformed from behind the counter to direct care with patients, leveraging technology to improve safety, Martha, as you mentioned, and efficiency and outcomes. And pharmacists today are really essential members of the interdisciplinary care team. They work side by side with physicians and nurses to optimize therapy, prevent adverse events, and ensure patients receive the right medication at the right time. And as we're combining this clinical expertise and data and technology, we're really transforming care from this reactive space of something's gone wrong or someone's been hurt to a more proactive way of looking at how do we prevent harm? How do we assure that the right medication is for this patient so that they have a great overall experience? And my own career journey, I began as a clinical pharmacist working in behavioral health, directly with patients with an interdisciplinary team to perform really complex medication management. And then I quickly went to a leadership track to lead pharmacy services, clinical pharmacy, medication safety for large health systems. And I had such a passion for workflows and how do we create really efficient, effective workflows that protect patients 24/7, but also protect caregivers. You want to have the right information at the right time to protect people And I was so passionate about this that I moved into the technology space. And Martha, you've seen firsthand how pharmacists are stepping beyond the traditional roles. And can you share an example of how technology is helping pharmacists deliver more proactive, patient-centered care?
Yeah, I'd love to share that. I kept seeing so much change throughout my career as far as more and more technology. I won't say how long it's been, but I will say that, at the beginning of my career, we even still had paper charts around. So that'll tell you a little bit how long it's been. But where I really saw change and evolution is with the entrance of the clinical decision support tools. I think they've really been integral in that evolution. So without the clinical support tools, before that was available, pharmacists were spending a lot of time, they were sorting through data, they're trying to determine what's important. It was a very manual process. The manual process led to a lot of inconsistencies. Oftentimes there were missed opportunities or delays in care. So adding in the clinical support really just removes that manual review. It ensures that critical information is not missed, it's not overlooked, it's not delayed. It aids in standardizing care as well. And it allows pharmacists, as you mentioned, Hayley, to be more proactive in responding to that data real time. As these tools kind of entered into our utilization, we do still see, despite these tools, that we're still seeing a lot of medication related events that are leading to oftentimes a primary cause of a patient's readmission. And when looking at those medication events and the readmissions, 1/4 of those have been deemed to be preventable. And so this is where more recently I'm really seeing the clinical support tools, they're continuing to expand, and they're really freeing up the pharmacists from being behind the computer, and it's getting them closer to patients. There's two key areas where the pharmacist roles are expanding, and where I think we're going to start to see greater impact, greater value. One area is transitions of care, and then the other is in the ambulatory care space. There's so much that changes when a patient moves from the outpatient setting to the inpatient setting and vice versa. So in the acute setting, patients, they're often very sick, and that kind of makes it more difficult for them to fully comprehend new information. A new diagnosis can be very overwhelming. There can just be too much information to absorb. New diagnoses can carry complex medication regimens, again, overwhelming that patient. Some of these patients have other factors like social determinants of health. They might have a language barrier or financial struggles. So without support, the chance of that non-compliance or some sort of medication-related event is really going to skyrocket. And I really witnessed some of these struggles as a caregiver for my father. It was a little over 5 years ago that he was diagnosed with multiple myeloma and went on to have a bone marrow transplant. Prior to this diagnosis, he was not on a single medication. He was not taking a single supplement, not even a daily aspirin. So when he was discharged after his transplant, he suddenly had 10 different medications that he had to manage. He didn't even have a language barrier. He didn't have any direct financial barriers, but he was still extremely overwhelmed. He's coming off of the transplant, he's very fatigued, his body is trying to recover, and then he's trying to learn, what do these medications do? Trying to remember what they're for. When does he need to take it? So it's just too much to take on overnight. And, he had a very strong support system with myself and my siblings, but many patients are just not that lucky. And so that's why we need the pharmacists really available to have the human interaction and educate our patients. They can help assess the understanding. That's something that you can't do from behind the computer. So before they go home, the pharmacist can spend time making sure they are comprehending. They need to make sure that the patient understands that they also need continued monitoring and follow-up. And that's really where the pharmacists are stepping in. So they provide, initial education often when new medications are first started. You're seeing more pharmacists going into the patient's room and talking to the patients and having that initial counseling session. And then when they're leaving the hospital, they'll do additional discharge education. Here, that's where they often might catch some of those other things where maybe they need to bring in care management or other people to assist to make sure that patient's going to have what they need. And pharmacists use technology to really support them in this because they need time to be with the patient, and they need to make sure, because we all have limited time, that it's being spent in the most useful place with the highest risk patients that are going to benefit the most from their time with them. And in addition to the surveillance tools expanding from inpatient, they're also expanding into the ambulatory care setting. And that really helps to ensure that compliance, the monitoring, the follow-up. And I think that's where the real value is, because pharmacists are then able to help keep patients out of the hospital and help keep their care managed in the outpatient setting, then that's where we want them to be.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Martha. And thank you for sharing your personal story about your father. I think that's all of us have that type of experience, right? Someone in your life certainly will experience healthcare at some point to varying levels of degree. And I think we all have a real passion for that, because you think about, what if it was my mom or my family member? We want to do the right thing and assure everyone's getting the right care. And for medication reconciliation, you're talking about that transition across from hospital to ambulatory settings. And the number one error that occurs in that space is the error of omission, where coming out of the hospital into the ambulatory space, medications are missed that can be life-saving for those patients. And I think that's where pharmacists really come in, of making sure with that accessibility on the ambulatory side, in the pharmacies, in clinics, really watching for that. And that's super important. Christen, what's your perspective?
Yeah, so ironically, Martha and I have very similar personal stories, to be honest. My father also recently was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, and putting on the specialty pharmacist hat, I think the biggest struggle I ran into was once he was in a skilled nursing facility and needed to be on a limited distribution drug that came from a specialty pharmacy. Having all of the specialty pharmacy background that I had, but I was no longer dispensing in a specialty pharmacy, right? So now I needed to use the tools and the people that I knew to kind of get some of those wheels moving. It was not as easy as I once thought, or as I even in my old role told people that it was, right? Once I was on the other side, it was really difficult to explain to the oncologist, to be perfectly honest with you, why I couldn't get my dad's drug to him at that skilled nursing facility because of the Medicare rules. The physician didn't understand. The physician was thinking the pharmacy was the problem. The pharmacy was thinking the skilled nursing was the problem. There's definitely issues across the board there that I think that pharmacists, when I stepped in, took off the daughter hat for a moment and stepped in as the pharmacist, I was able to smooth some things over, but it really does open your eyes, I think, to where people are playing a role in the various different worlds of pharmacy that we live in, right? And the pharmacist that actually dispensed my dad's medication ultimately was able to help us with that situation, because it's a tough situation to be in. You need to get the medication, but they can't dispense it to you when you're in a skilled area. So yeah, it's very interesting. So Martha, I'm sorry you went through that, but I can fully relate to where you're at.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we're in that sandwich generation. I think this is going to happen to a lot of us a lot more often, right? And that actually brings up a good point about technology, is the caregiver who is a little bit maybe more savvy to technology than the patient. So in my case, right, my parents didn't have anything switched over to using the portal or using text or using any kinds of tools like that with the pharmacy or even with the physician, to be perfectly honest. So as soon as I stepped in and they named me a healthcare proxy, I switched everything over to make my life easier. And the tools are really, really great, because I can actually interact and send portal messages and notes about, whether or not, oh, we're experiencing a side effect here or there. And that got to the team a lot faster than me trying to call and sit on hold. So the same thing happens in a pharmacy, I think. And I know because I used to sit there. So when I think about, technology in pharmacy, I started out as a pharmacy technician. I was a technician for 5 years before I became a pharmacist. And I can think back to those early days of technology really only helped us maybe with inventory management. We had printers. I won't tell anyone the name of the printer, but you'll know it by the sound, right? That squeaky wheel sound. And we had, we had technology that helped with maybe point of sale adjudication, right? But then things started to really pick up with electronic prescribing. I remember the very first prescriber who was, what is this that I have to do? And now we've got this widespread adoption of electronic prescribing. Not only that, but every state has now sort of enforced their rules around electronic prescribing. I don't think there's one left that allows anything other than that at this point. So it's no longer optional to use the technology. And so as we turn toward the future, technology is not just an operational transactional piece to pharmacy. It's now going deeper than that and becoming more clinical and turning toward that. How do you offer up a more solid clinical base to the pharmacist, to the patients, to the provider, in that setting where you're actually doing, the function of dispensing the medication? So when you think of a cloud platform like ScriptMed, that cloud piece helps to empower the pharmacist to integrate more seamlessly into that care team that you spoke of earlier, right? We all came out of pharmacy school knowing and feeling like we're part of that triangle, right? We're the pharmacist, the nurse, the provider. We're part of that triangle. But I don't know about you, but when I graduated, it was actually a little hard to get into that triangle sometimes. It was not always easy. But I think technology has really helped us get a little bit more of a seat at the table for that conversation, because we're no longer trying to fax or sit on hold to call and talk to one particular person. We're talking to the providers in a way that is meaningful to them. The technology solutions are flexible in the sense that we can ask, hey, how do you want to be communicated with? And the pharmacies can document that and actually communicate with provider A via the phone, or maybe provider B doesn't ever want a phone call and he only wants to communicate via the portal. That's fine too. Those are the kinds of things that we need to really be thinking about as technology advances, is meeting the provider and the patient where they're at. They're all on a technological journey too. They're all shifting. And so we all need to really be talking about it together. And so that we can finally get to that collaboration we all intended. I think finally I want to have interest here on the time, but I just want to call out, I think that as our profession advances, and I know that many of us are feeling the pressure of the regulations that are changing quickly around us, we need technology to help us keep track of all of those regulations and be able to demonstrate, have the system be able to demonstrate on a whim, yes, I've got all of my I's dotted and my T's crossed, not only for regulation, for accreditation. And then when you come down to even manufacturer and payer KPI and contracts that they may have, they need to have that robust, easy to use reporting that helps them to answer those questions right on the spot. So yeah, I think we've come a long way technology wise since I was a technician, but we have a lot more to go. And it's not a bad problem to have when you're working in technology.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you both. And we have some terrific questions from our audience. So I'm going to switch over. And Lily asked us, what are skills that are becoming the most valuable to the next generation of pharmacists? And I can start with this one and give you all a moment to think about that. I recently spoke at the white coat ceremony for Lipscomb University in Nashville, and got to share some of my perspective with them as I would say, a seasoned pharmacist at this point. And I gave them a few pointers around some of the best skill sets. I've been training pharmacists, students, residents for 20 years of my career. Always had an entourage of students and trainees with me because it's so important for us to be dedicated to the profession and grow up that next generation. And I think critical thinking skills and the ability to pivot, especially when it comes to being open to artificial intelligence and how that's going to fit into the workflow and how it can enhance the care of individuals. That area is growing so quickly. And interestingly, my daughter is applying for pharmacy school for next fall. So she's a senior in her undergrad. And I could not be more proud. So as a mom, it's really an exciting time for her. And I tried not to convince her to go this route, in that I wanted it to be her choice. And she knew she wanted to be in the healthcare realm. But she and I talk a lot about that, of what is the skill set for the pharmacist of the future. And I think a lot around gene and cell therapy and specialty medications, and being well versed in that space of knowing, skating to where the puck's gonna be for the future of care. And there's so much around biologics in that space, but skill sets that involve empathy and critical thinking will serve you well throughout your whole career, regardless of what avenue of which you choose to specialize. But Martha, what do you think?
So I laughed when you said critical thinking, because I was going to say, clinical decision making. Because I think my fear with technology is that people just react to, the alert, but they still need to take in all the information and make sure that this is the right decision for that patient, because it can't do everything for us. And I think we saw that, back when we started with CPOE and we built in, order sets or order sentences for certain drugs. And sometimes, our physicians are just clicking on the order sentence, not even thinking about the dose. So technology, while it's definitely helping us and it's all positive, we always need to be thinking, and we still need our clinical training. Technology is not going to replace us. And then, as you mentioned, the empathy thing is very important on top of that as technology comes in.
Yeah. Christen, how about you?
So I have two that I've held true my entire career, especially when I've either been hiring or training or coaching. One is remain curious, always ask questions, and ask them in such a way that encourages the responder to also think positively about. We may be doing something that we've been doing for 20 years, and it's okay to graciously challenge us on why we've been doing it that way. We could be learning something new to do it different, right? So remain curious, and graciously challenge us. And then the last thing is be resourceful. Be resourceful. Just be like, you're learning a lot of information. Don't try to memorize it all, but please try to remember where you learned it. And so you can always look it up, and you should always interpret it again later, because the situation around you might change. Those would be my top two.
Terrific. Yeah, we have a few more questions from our audience. These are really fun. Amanda shares, most of my network includes nurses and specialty clinicians, but a friend is considering a future in pharmacy. If you could share one piece of wisdom with your younger self before starting pharmacy school, what would that be? And how would that insight have shaped your personal and professional journey? I'll start, guys, and then think about how you would answer to this. When I first started pharmacy school, I was going to be a clinical pharmacist in a hospital like that. I had my mind set on that. And what I would tell students today is be very open-minded, a little bit to your point, Christen, of be curious and be open to all the opportunities out there. I would have never dreamed that I would end up working in a technology company in operations and management and leadership. So be really open and think about all the possibilities, because pharmacists are so well trained in evidence and logic and critical thinking and business operations. I think we have such a unique skill set that the possibilities are absolutely endless. So, Martha, what do you think? What would you have told your
So we
younger
should really
self?
chat more, Hayley, because we have some similar stories here. I went into pharmacy school only really knowing the retail pharmacy. And so thinking that was what I would be doing. I chose pharmacy because I liked chemistry in high school. I didn't have any opportunity to shadow or anything like that. And so again, keeping that open mind and learning, by the end, as I approached graduation, I knew the last thing I wanted to do was work in retail pharmacy. So I really, really loved working the inpatient in the hospital, and going that route. But I think what I would encourage myself to do earlier on is to shadow, so that I would know a little more what I was actually going into. And then I did feel like my training was all very science-based. And I think that I could have benefited more from kind of expanding outside that with some business type of courses and learning that earlier on, because our healthcare here, I mean, obviously it's a business as well. And so if I had known a little bit more a little earlier on about that, I probably would have put that into my training as well.
I love it. Kristen?
Listen to your mentors earlier. I think I mentioned I was a technician before I went to pharmacy school. I spent my first 4 years of my undergrad as a pharmacy technician, putting myself through my undergrad, and then another year after that, trying to decide what I was going to do next. And they told me to go to pharmacy school probably 2 years into my undergrad, because they told me that I would be good at it. And I kicked and screamed and squabbled and wanted to do something else. And they were right. I should have done it earlier. But it is what it is. It is my journey now, and I'm extremely and eternally grateful to them for all that they taught me. I would also say continue to find mentors. Mentors are extremely valuable. Don't wait for someone to approach you to tell you, I'm your mentor. Go find one, ask someone. The worst thing that's going to happen is they will say, I don't have time to be a mentor, or no, I don't want to be a mentor. That's okay. It's not your fault that you asked. Just go ahead and ask. Yeah, I would say mentors are extremely valuable to have. And
I
listen
love
to them.
that. We all need mentors. I think you need them all throughout your career, but I think especially as you're younger and navigating, what great advice. Absolutely. Everyone deserves a great mentor that encourages you and guides you when you struggle or when you're not. So, ladies, this time went so quickly. We are almost out of time. And as we start closing down our time together, one, thank you to our audience. Thank you for being here. And thank you for the great questions. That was really fun to think about, our younger selves, and to talk about the younger generation of pharmacists that are coming up. And as we celebrate out the rest of this month with American Pharmacists, what is one thing you want people to remember about pharmacists? What would you say, Martha?
I would say pharmacists, they're essential because they're very accessible team members. And so they're really those who help patients stay on their therapy, and that accessibility is important.
Kristen, how about
I
you?
would say we're innovators, and we drive new possibilities. Yeah.
Love that. Yeah. Pharmacists are patient advocates. They are really champions for patients. And that's what I would want our audience to really remember. So With that, we're going to wrap up this 30 minutes of this LinkedIn Live, and we're going to thank our audience, and thank you to my co-presenters here, Christen and Martha. What a great time. I enjoy you all so much. I enjoy working with you, and I enjoyed our session today. And happy American Pharmacists Month to you all. I hope you're celebrating really big with your teams, and that your family is celebrating you as well. So with that, we're going to close out our time together, and so grateful and appreciative for this time. And at this time, we'll end our session. Thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thanks, everyone. Go celebrate.